I would like to thank the President of the United States for the very strong cooperation that we have felt on his part, in particular during difficult times. And I would like to recall once again what we've been able to do. These difficult times were related to matters related to cooperation between our intelligence services. And I'm very pleased to see that Barack Obama, as president, has put on the agenda the issue of the protection of privacy. We know today how important intelligence is today in the United States, but all over the world, in particular in the fight against jihadi terrorism. Our relationship is very strong and very close in the field of the economy. Last year, the United States of America was the major trade partner with Germany. And that's one of the reasons why I have always committed myself in favor of a trade partnership with the United States. Our negotiations have made progress, but have not been completed. But we have reached certain progress, and we will most likely meet again in the future to continue. We share a conviction that globalization must be humane. We cannot go back to the pre-globalization world. That's why this type of trade partnership, which goes beyond customs regulations, is a very positive element, and I'm very pleased about the progress we've been able to make with Canada. We have also made progress in the protection of the environment and the fight against climate change. Under Barack, or rather without Barack Obama, we would not have been able to succeed at the COP21, the cooperation with the United States and between the United States and China made it possible to sign the Paris Agreement. And this should give orientations to the entire world and satisfy the needs of sustainable development and the 2030 agenda. Another point I'd like to mention is Africa. Africa, as a neighboring continent, is extremely important for us in Europe. The development of African countries is in the interest of all, for us as Germans, but also for the European Union. This is going to be a theme of concern in the coming years. We also discussed the fight against ISIL. Germany has cooperated in the past and will continue to cooperate in supporting the Peshmerga and monitoring the airspace. But clearly, the United States is bearing the brunt in this fight. And that is why what the President says, that is, that Germany and the European countries must commit themselves more and more within the framework of NATO. Germany has heard the message and understood it and has begun reacting to that message. We have cooperated very closely within the military framework that we would like to move forward with and accompany it with a political framework in Afghanistan. We've also cooperated on the topics dealing with Crimea, the annexation of Crimea. We must also find a political solution, and cooperation with the United States is necessary in those areas. We're going to continue with the present administration of the United States, and we hope to be able to do that afterwards. We've come to the end of a period of very intense cooperation because from the point of view of Germany, the relationship between Germany and the United States is really the main pillar of our foreign policy, linked to our interests and to values that represent a common platform: human rights, freedom, democracy, and a commitment in favor of a free world order. I hope that we will also be able to work positively with the new president. Meanwhile, I would like to thank you, Mr. President, for this very close cooperation and friendship.
To Germany, it will not be my last. I have somehow continued to miss Oktoberfest, so that's probably something that is better for me to do as a former president rather than as president. I'll have more fun. It's also wonderful to be back with my great friend and ally, Chancellor Merkel. As I reflect back over the last 8 years, I could not ask for a steadier or more reliable partner on the world stage, often through some very challenging times. So I want to thank you for your friendship, for your leadership, and your commitment to our alliance. And I want to thank the German people for the incredible partnership that our countries have been able to establish all these years. Last week marked the 27th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. The United States was proud to stand with the people of Germany as this nation and this continent reunited and rebuilt and reached for a better future. And it's a reminder that the commitment of the United States to Europe is enduring, and it's rooted in the values we share, values that Angela just mentioned: our commitment to democracy, our commitment to rule of law, our commitment to the dignity of all people in our own countries and around the world. Our alliance with our NATO partners has been a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy for nearly 70 years, in good times and in bad, and through presidents of both parties, because the United States has a fundamental interest in Europe's stability and security. The commitment that Angela and I share to this guiding principle has formed the basis for our conversations this afternoon. We discussed our efforts to keep our countries competitive and to create jobs and opportunity on both sides of the Atlantic. The negotiations on agreements like TTIP have been challenging, and obviously at a moment when there's concerns about globalization and the benefits that accrue to particular people, it is important that those negotiations and channels of communication remain, because ultimately what we have shown over the last several decades is that markets and trade and commerce can create prosperity in all of our countries, that it's not a win-lose situation, but it can be a win-win situation. And at a time when the European project is facing challenges, it's especially important to show the benefits of economic integration by continuing to invest in our people and working to reduce inequality, both within and across our countries. I reiterated our hope that negotiations over the United Kingdom's exit from the EU will be conducted in a smooth and orderly and transparent fashion and preserve as closely as possible the economic and political and security relationships between the UK and EU. And I continue to believe what I said in Hanover, that the EU remains one of the world's great political and economic achievements, and that those achievements should not be taken for granted, that they need to be nurtured and cultivated and protected and fought for, because the achievements that we've seen on this continent, in contrast to a divided Europe of the previous century, are ones that remind us of how important it is that we work together and that we are willing to uphold principles that have resulted in unprecedented prosperity and security throughout Europe. and around the world. With the threat of climate change only becoming more urgent, Angela and I focused on the need for American and EU leadership to advance global cooperation. Both of our nations were proud to join the Paris Climate Agreement, which the world should work to implement quickly. Continued global leadership on climate, in addition to increasing private investment in clean energy, is going to be critical to meeting this growing threat. Of course, we discussed our commitment to meeting shared security challenges, from countering cyber threats to ensuring that Iran continues to live up to the terms of the Iran nuclear deal. I commended Angela for her leadership, along with President Hollande, in working to resolve the conflict in Ukraine. We continued to stand with the people of Ukraine and for the basic principle that nations have a right to determine their own destiny, and we discussed the importance of maintaining sanctions until Russia fully complies with the Minsk agreement. As part of the coalition against ISIL, we are putting that terrorist network under tremendous pressure. Here in Berlin this week, coalition members are meeting to ensure we remain unified and focused on our mission to destroy ISIL. We are very grateful for the vital contributions Germany has made to this fight, training local forces in Iraq, sharing intelligence, providing reconnaissance aircraft, including the recent deployment of additional NATO AWACS. And as Iraqi forces continue the liberation of Mosul, I'm pleased that NATO will be meeting the commitment we made in Warsaw to begin training additional forces in Iraq, which started this January. We also continue to stand united with Germany and our NATO allies in our ongoing efforts to build peace and stability in Afghanistan. On Syria, it's clear that the indiscriminate attacks on civilians by the Assad regime and Russia will only worsen the humanitarian catastrophe, and that a negotiated end to the conflict is the only way to achieve lasting peace in Syria. Angela and I also agreed the need for a comprehensive and humane response to the devastating humanitarian crisis in Syria and for the influx of migrants and refugees from around the world. We need to build on the progress achieved at the UN Refugee Summit, which yielded new commitments from some 50 nations and organizations. The United States is doing our part by increasing the number of refugees we resettle, and I want again to commend Angela and, more importantly, the German people for the extraordinary leadership and compassion that you have shown in the face of what I know is a very difficult challenge. You are not alone in trying to deal with this challenge. This is not an issue that any one country should bear, but is in need of an international response. And I not only intend to make sure that we have put in place more robust support from the United States, but I'm hoping that that continues beyond my administration. On this final visit, I am reminded of the visit I made here before I became president. It was 8 years ago. I had no gray hair, but I believe today what I said then. If you want a model for what is possible, if you want to see how to build a peaceful and prosperous and dynamic society, then look at Berlin and look at Germany. Look at Chancellor Merkel. Her personal story helps to tell the story of incredible achievement that the German people have embarked on, and I think is something that you should be very proud of. It is not inevitable that we make progress. It requires hard work. Sometimes it may seem as if progress is stalled, but what the history of post-war Germany shows is that strength and determination and focus and adherence to the values that we care about will result in a better future for our children and our grandchildren. And on behalf of the American people, I want to thank the German people. I want to thank Chancellor Merkel for your deep friendship and your steadfast partnership.